All right, we're in Colossians chapter 2. However, I would argue, if you remember the outline, that we're still in the early portion. We're still in the introduction phase, in a way, of this book, of the way Paul writes. And so throughout, one of the characteristics we've seen that periodically through the first chapter, Paul would introduce different elements that were specifically talking about the fact that this relationship that he had with them, and that's what's different, is because he had not taught them personally, and he is reassuring them throughout of his own interest in them and of their own value and the validity of their faith and their identity as Christians, regardless of the fact that an apostle didn't teach them. And that's why, in many ways, I think we ought to be able to identify very much with the Colossians in this way. Well, he's going to do that again here in chapter 2 as he continues that idea. Last week we looked at all the things of Paul talking about his work that he had done, the nature of the gospel, and now he's going to really turn that around and focus it on the Colossians. So if you will, let's begin, and we'll read beginning in chapter 2, verse 1. For I want you to know what a great conflict I have for you and those in Laodicea, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh, that your hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love, and attaining to all riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the knowledge of the mystery of God, both of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. So, just as we're beginning, he says, I want you to know what a great conflict I have for you and those in Laodicea. Now, just to kind of put all this, Laodicea is going to come up again, that these were two congregations in cities. Hierapolis was the other, that all were in the Lycus Valley. So they were all in that area, one area. So you have these kind of sister congregations in a way. They were close together. Apparently they were established by the same man. They had that area, and so they're aware of one another, and so there's a kinship already from what you see here, that they've worked together, they know one another because they're kind of in a similar situation. That is, they weren't taught, the Christians in Laodicea weren't taught by an apostle either, so they have a lot in common. And that's the background when he says, I want you to know what a great conflict I have for you and those in Laodicea. So the difference is, in some way, I've got this conflict, and it's for you people that I've not even met. That's the point of emphasis he's trying to bring out. Now, the first thing then we have to come back to is, what's the nature of this conflict that Paul has? What is he referring to? Say that again? I still didn't catch it. A struggle. Yes, it is a struggle. Okay, let's get more specific. It's a struggle. The word is the idea, has the idea of a struggle. Matter of fact, it originated with the idea of a physical struggle. But it also has the idea of the pain, the difficulties that go with that. What, in the immediate time frame, what is he talking about that could refer in any way and have meaning for those in Laodicea and Colossae that Paul was doing? That he wanted to connect those two. What struggle was he going through? Oh, it could be, but I think it's more than that. Okay, definitely. Now, the Jews, that tended to be a little bit earlier. They followed him at least all the way, ultimately, to Jerusalem, and got him in trouble there when he was imprisoned, ultimately in Caesarea. He was imprisoned there for 2 years, and then that's when the trip to Rome starts, and he ends up in Rome in around beginning of 60. Yes, John? Well, yes, they were fairly new in Christ. The question is, though, in what way was he struggling for them? What is this conflict that he has when he's miles away from them that pertains to them. What is he connecting? That's right, he'd never met them. So how are they connected? Tracy? Okay, that is why he's doing this. You're correct. There are, as he's already kind of mentioned and he's alluded to, and he's going to get to later on here in chapter 2 before long, there are some people that are trying to pull people away to become their own followers. Okay? And so all these references that he is doing about reminding them is there are two ways he's going about it. Number one is establishing an emotional connection to some degree with them through this letter. You matter to me just as much as anybody that I've known and taught personally. That's an important part. The second part is going to be, that we're going to see later on here, is you don't need anything that they're selling, that those other people are selling. Those are the two ways. So he's got two ways he's approaching it. The first is to strengthen the attachment to Christ through him so that they don't doubt their own Christianity. That's one of the things you ought to see throughout all of this, is they're a little bit doubting of the validity, the value of their own Christianity. Again, they weren't taught by an apostle. They're kind of out there in the middle. You're away from all the big. You're the rural part of Asia. Okay, that kind of thing. So there could be reasons why they could look down on themselves in their part of this. He's wanting to make sure to lift that up and to emphasize you in the gospel have everything you need as far as about the will of God, about knowledge of God and what to do. And what we're going to see, he's been kind of implying it already. I think this is the third time. But if you go back to verses 9 and 10, he talked about, remember, knowledge and wisdom and understanding there. And then he comes back to it here about why he has been presenting all this. Well, he's doing that again. Why? Because you've got some people peddling their understanding, their knowledge, and their version of wisdom. And that's what's going on. Now, we'll talk about more when we get it later into chapter 2 about what was actually part of that. But I want you to understand kind of the way in which and why he's constructed this. So he wants them to know that he's going through a great conflict. So it's not that he had some specific kind of thing that, hey, someone told me, someone was over here and they were talking bad about you, so I went to bat for you. That's not what he's talking about. But remember that when he's writing this, as far as I can tell, he was in the early days probably of his imprisonment in Rome. So all these things he's been doing and battling that would have included the Jews, I think you're right about that, because this is partly a Jewish problem, though it's different than the earlier days that they were following him around. And so you've got that kind of issue, okay? And he's battling both with the Jewish problem. He's dealing with it from a legal point of view about the validity of Christianity. Now, background again, we need to understand something that we probably don't remind ourselves of enough. Under Roman rule, the Romans allowed, when they conquered people, to keep their religion. Okay, that was one of the deals. Some people they come in and you have to give all of that up and they're going to change all that. Rome said, no, we're fine. You keep going about your business. As long as we get your money and you don't cause any problems, then we're good. Okay? So Judaism already existed when they were taken over and they were kind of incorporated into the empire, which happened under the Republic time of Pompey about 63 BC. So they were there. But Christianity is new. So it's just kind of, but Rome hasn't figured that out yet. That's going to happen in 64 AD with the persecution in Rome itself. But it's understood more as kind of an offshoot, kind of a part of Judaism originally. Okay, so you've got that going on. So that tie-in is part of the issue. So you have an issue with the validity of Christianity. And for Paul, that's part of what his defense has been. To put that into perspective, go and look at the defenses that he makes in the book of Acts, in chapter 22 and 26, that what he is doing there is offering a defense of Christianity as much as he is of himself, which is for the benefit of everybody else. It is in a way to show the validity of Christianity as being the perfect way in which Judaism was always pointing there, and now here it is. It is a defense of Christianity as being valid that he goes through in those chapters. And so in doing that, when establishing it, that's the basis upon which then, that's for everybody's benefit. The more he can convince people of the validity of Christianity, then that's better for everybody, isn't it? Okay? So you've got these points of conflict. One is legal and one is religious. And that's kind of forms what Paul's dealing with the whole time when you think about this struggle. Okay? But the emphasis now of that last phrase, and for as many as have not seen my face in the flesh. So the Colossians, Laodiceans, and then anybody else. So that would include Hierapolis or people that he didn't know. It didn't matter, is his point. This is actually the point. Paul does not have to have taught someone personally, seen someone personally, to feel and work to help out and improve that situation. It's a little bit different, but when Jesus prayed in John 17, he prayed not just for his apostles, but for all those who would follow, essentially, who would believe their word. So that was including us too. And so that's in a way what Paul is saying is that it's not just about this personal thing for me. It's about anybody who is going to believe and become a Christian. And here's then specifically what he wants from them. Okay, the purpose of the struggle. And so this goes down to his work. He wants people to take from, and here's the takeaway from what Paul's doing for you, Colossians, is verse 2. First of all, that your hearts may be encouraged. Okay, now that's really the straightforward purpose. Now, isn't it kind of interesting, though, on the face of it, that he just said, I've got this great struggle for you, and I want you to be encouraged by that. But if you think about it, is that Paul's basically saying, I'm putting up a fight for you. I'm in your corner. I'm defending what you believe too. The idea of being encouraged, it's a general word. Encouraged is a good translation, but it's the idea, it's also comforted, you might see, is that he's hoping that in your heart, that their hearts, okay, for everybody who doesn't know him, their hearts, that is, of how you're going to, yes, how you feel about it, but also as you think about it and make decisions, that you can be encouraged. You can be comforted by the fact that Paul's engaged in this fight, and he's doing that partially for you. And that Paul thought of it as then he understood his work was bigger than him, bigger than just the people he taught. And that was the role of an apostle. It was bigger. And that they want everybody that comes from that should take encouragement from it. But now he's going to describe, okay? It's one thing to say encouragement. If you ask people to say what they find encouraging, it's always an interesting list. People are encouraged by, I just want to encourage people. Well, those people are heinous sinners. I'm not sure that keep it up is the way we ought to go, right? That's a different kind of encouragement. He's saying you should be encouraged by what I'm doing, and here's how. being knit together in love. What should make you feel encouraged? First of all, make sure that you are knit together in love. That's an interesting word. It's every